documents. These documents range from civil suits in federal court alleging constitutional rights violations, to ordinances, to indictments, to orders, and you name it. Some involve me personally, but thankfully most do not. I believe the criminal justice system in Lane County is insanely dysfunctional in many ways. Fortunately, the first responders, the Eugene Police Department, Springfield Police Department, and Lane County Sheriff's Office do an unbelievably good job under extremely bad circumstances. The bad circumstances are due to the combination of three very pathological governmental entities: the Lane County District Attorney's Office, the Lane County Circuit Court, and the Lane County Board of Commissioners. And you might as well add the Eugene City Council to that list of pathological government entities while you're at it. While I'm still focused on alerting the public to the rampant corruption and the incompetence in the upper echelons of Lane County government, I'm trying to do it differently. One component of my new approach is to look for examples of undeniable official misconduct in high-ranking government officials. Second-degree official misconduct is a lot easier to prove than first-degree official misconduct because you don't need to demonstrate the intent of the public servant for breaking the rule. All you have to do is show that a statute was violated. If a public servant is accused of first-degree official misconduct, there's bound to be lots of disagreement between the prosecutor and the public servant about what the intent was. But in the case of second-degree official misconduct, all that the prosecutor needs to demonstrate is that the public servant knowingly violated a statute. Here's an example of a slam-dunk case for official misconduct in the second degree. It occurred on October 30th, 2012, and was described in an October 31st, 2012 article in the Register Guard by Karen McCallum. According to Ms. McCallum, a federal judge in Eugene knowingly violated a statute of the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act of 1996. This statute mandates that a federal offender who maliciously damages or destroys federal property be sentenced to a minimum of 60 months in federal prison. The federal judge sentenced one arsonist to 3 months and another arsonist to 1 year. Both sentences are much lower than the 60-month minimum mandated by the 1966 statute. The judge knowingly violated a federal statute and appears to be guilty of the crime of official misconduct in the second degree. I'm also researching the possibility of second-degree official misconduct by Lane County District Attorney Alex Gardner. You'll be happy to know that the only possibility of official misconduct that I see in the city of Eugene right now is Prosecutor Barkovic. He could be accused of first-degree official misconduct for failing to prosecute the latest linebacker to drive drunk. Anyway, if the Eugene Police Department ever has the funding to have a full-time staff member devoted to investigating official misconduct downtown, you know where to find me. Thank you.
Okay, and we have one other, Zachary, is it Bischoff?
Vishanoff, yeah.
Vishanoff, okay, I'm pretty close to that.
Like Vishanoff the dog.
Thank you, sir.
So, hi everybody. Tonight, I don't know what I'm going to talk about to a couple of you. It'll seem a little repetitive because I talked to the subcommittee a couple nights ago and didn't really maybe reach as many of you and get reactions as I'd like to. The location of these meetings has really been a surprise to me as I saw, because I followed the whole station moving out here issue. I went to the public forums in the atrium building. There was a lot of concern. During that process, it was never mentioned that, oh, by the way, the public's going to have to come out there for any police-related issues. It was, I just feel like it's a slap in the face to the public. Now, it's not really a public slap in the face because I haven't heard anyone really talking about it around town. It's more for policy wonks. It makes it hard to be a sidewalk superintendent. Okay, and that's a little bit of a joke, but there's some really important things that there's some people in the community have tried to get into the details with you for quite a while, and it's okay to delay us for a number of years, but eventually I think we want some tough answers on policies. One of the policies I've tried to get is that the police commission and the different weapons-related committees should have to review video of past incidences that have gone wrong to help inform the future. And what we've gotten is that staff can produce a video and show the committee and do these ride-alongs and these events, but that if the public wants to use the public's screen and point out some public problems, that it's just off limits, you know? And so it's not the kind of thing I'm going to get changed overnight, but if we make it harder for people who are really trying to help you, and it actually helps officers, I think, because when you get into the details of all these policies, if you can have very explicit rules, then if you ever have a bad officer, you can weed them out, because it will be clear that they broke the law, because they won't be fuzzy language. And so having your committee out here is just going to help kind of preserve fuzzy language and just kind of create more barriers for people who have something to share with you and really go to great lengths to help shape the direction of the department. And before I talk your ear off, I'm just going to reiterate one other request I made to the committee, and that's that the Autzen drinking district, that U of O has an exemption for drinking around Autzen on game day. This got approved by the city council at some point. Part of the problem was, you know, the officers were so busy with the traffic that they can't keep the ducks from chugging beers and punching each other. So we just kind of happened to open the floodgates and create a whole district around there. I think that should be revisited. There's been a couple rapes near Autzen on game day recently, and it's a pattern of bad behavior. And so just a policy issue. I hope to put that on your future agenda. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. There are no other public comments at this time.
Thank you, James. Thank you, members of the public, for attending today. The next item on our agenda is comments from chair and items from commissioners. And I'll start with Joe and proceed in a clockwise fashion.
Yeah, again, I guess one of the articles that you gave to Carter about sort of criminalizing sitting on the sidewalks. Probably, again, worth looking at. There's been a lot of court activity around those kinds of things. And as a community, we should be looking at that stuff. That's it.
Carlos?
Thank you for the time on the floor. It's good to be back. Thank you all for your interest in what I've been doing the last 9+ months. Thanks for your support and your interest, and a lot of notes and a lot of good wishes. It is time for us to keep on working. You decided that the police commission needed to be an important component of the city charter, and I thank you for that.
I'll pass, thank you. Jim?
Well, we had the opportunity at another Craig and Chapter dinner to have Steve Williams present his very lively stories about what's going on in the city as far as fraud goes, especially in relation to Craigens and banking institutions. He's always great to hear. It's always a good turnout when he shows up. He's a great speaker. If anybody's ever had a chance to talk to him or hear him speak, he talks very quickly, but he gets a lot of information out of him. He's got a lot of good stories, and it always makes it interesting. It's always a good turnout. So thank you, Chief, for allowing him to come see us. Also, one other comment. I am so glad the political season is over, so my phone will stop ringing all day long.
It wasn't me.
No. Thanks.
James?
Well, it seems like it's been a long, long time since I've been here at the table with everybody. So it's great to see everyone. I'd like to thank the public. Deb comes out quite often and really appreciate her feedback. And all the other community members that come here, take the time out of their schedule to come here and offer comments. I do want to say, Juan Carlos, you ran a very respectable race. I do appreciate that, and there are other opportunities in the future and stuff, so you already position yourself. First thing is to become known, a known commodity, and then you move forward at that time. It's great to be back. It seems like I've been gone a long time. That's it.
When it was first decided to move the meetings out to here, we said that we were going to review it. We've had several meetings out here now, and maybe in the very upcoming, maybe next month, agenda, we can take a look at it and discuss whether we want to keep meeting out here.
I'll suggest that for an agenda item for discussion. As you know, the chair sets the agenda, which is not me. Okay, and I also would like to echo James' sentiments about the public coming. I really appreciate that Zach and Deb have been coming to our meetings and have some comments that are thought-provoking for us to consider. I'd like to congratulate James on his election to the EWIP board. And hopefully that will not interfere with your police commission work.
Not at all.
It would be great to keep you.
No.
Okay, and then we do have our new city council representative, Claire Surratt, and I understand from Carter that she'll be arriving late at the meeting, and I'd like to introduce her when she does get here to everyone, so I'll interrupt at the next opportunity when she arrives. That concludes our comments from chair and items from commissioners, and I'm sorry you have to listen to me run the meeting once again. I was hoping Caitlin would be here tonight. That brings us to committee reports, and we have a report from the Outreach Committee. Joe?
Okay. We had a very short meeting, as Carter noted. It was only half an hour, but made some good progress. I guess we have started talking with the police union about the survey. So that's moving forward. Caitlin did a really wonderful job of looking into setting up the forum at the University of Oregon, and got a lot of good information and, working in on that. And then so we basically had 2 agenda items and added kind of another half, talking about another forum, which would be on the state of public safety, once the U of O forum has been completed. So we're beginning to look at some of the planning for that. Short meeting, but I thought very productive.
And Joe, was there a date set? And the other piece of the U of O public forum is that Caitlin reported back that the representatives from the University of Oregon would like to jointly put on the public forum at the U of O with the police commission. And they set a date for that. I can't remember. Was it
I don't
April 9th?
remember what it was.
The date that they have it.
Yeah,
So
somewhere around then.
that's the date we're aiming at. I think it's April 9th. There will be more to come on that.
Okay.
Is that it, Joe?
That's it.
Okay, thank you for the report. I'd like to turn the time over to Bob for the committee report from the Policy Screening and Review Committee.
Thank you. The committee met Tuesday, as we usually do, and this will be the 3rd meeting now that we couldn't take any official action because the first one, because of the move to the new building, wasn't noticed, so we couldn't officially take action. But the last 2 have been because we haven't had a quorum. And I don't want to say this without sounding pious about it, but I arrange my vacations around these meetings so that I can be present. I didn't ask to be appointed a commissioner to take it lightly and not be showing up at the meetings. And we have people that have missed a couple. We've had some that have missed several in a row. And if the persons are not interested in serving on the committee, I wish they would step aside and let someone who might be interested in serving and attending, because we can't get our work done without having a quorum. And it's just frustrating as a group to see the people that do show up, and the 3 of us that were there Tuesday, and try to go through our work, and knowing we can't actually take an official action on it. And we need to, tighten up some things. So as chairman, I guess I have a responsibility to let people know that, and I'm going to do that. So, but as a result of the meeting, we did go over the 3 policies that were on our agenda. 1101, which is the officer's conduct, was not ready for code of conduct was not ready for us to act on. There were some changes, some minor things, and also some issues that we brought up with staff that need to be looked at, and they're going to report back to us at the next month meeting in December. So we'll be ready for that policy, but policy 306, handcuffing and restraints, and policy 501, arrest procedures. On both of those policies, we were pretty much of a consensus as a committee that we've been over it twice, and the changes were made to our satisfaction by the administration, and we are ready to go forward with that. So I think it's proper for me to recommend to the commission tonight that they approve these two policies. It is included in your packet, and I hope you've had time to look at them and see if you have any objections. And I would so move.
I'll second.
Discussion on the motion. Can I make a suggestion that either Bob, you, or Lieutenant, Lieutenant Reynolds, walk us through the policies as a group?
You understand now?
I'm not sure what his title was in the meeting the other day. There's no way I would scribble that.
Yeah, you want to just skip over to 1101, I assume, then,
Yeah.
since that's not coming up. So first one, 306, the handcuffing, restraints.
Tamara, can we invite Lieutenant
Yeah.
Jones at the table?
Unless you want to put it
That's fine.
here. Yeah. Yes, please.
So as we look at 306, basically we're addressing the physicalities of how we're restraining people when we take them into custody there. If I recall, the specific changes and things that are addressed have been removed. One that's still there, you can see is underlined on the back, that there was a bunch of wording added around medical considerations and what needs to be addressed as we're processing people through booking and release and that type of thing. If you've read that, you can see there any questions around what's in there.
Can I ask you a question?
Please.
So in the second paragraph, and I didn't ask this at the committee level, but I was thinking about this the other day, the second section under medical considerations, 306.5, really talks about excited delirium, which are symptoms. Has there, a couple, 4 or 5 years ago, we went to a Lane County Sheriff's Department presentation about excited delirium. Some of us did that were on the commission. And there was some controversy over concluding that that was a diagnosis at that time. Has there been anything out in the law enforcement community around discussion about excited delirium in the last 4 or 5 years?
Do you mean in terms of the officers making the diagnosis, or that there's actually a condition of excited delirium?
Condition.
Yes, it's actually defined, and it's been in the medical community since the late 1800s. So there's actually a bunch of case law that goes back and talks about the early conditions, and it had a whole bunch of different names. But in about the late 80s is when excited delirium, actually the term itself, came around. So it is something that's recognized in the medical community, and but it's overall, over the history of it, it's had so many different names and fallen under so many different misdiagnoses, for lack of a better association, that it's really just now coming to the forefront of being an actual, and it's even a challenge to really diagnose without having a lot of expertise in it, because it can be confused for a lot of things. But the awareness in the law enforcement community has improved greatly over the last number of years, and especially here locally.
Thank you. Juan Carlos, and then James.
Thank you, Lieutenant Reynolds, for joining us at the table for the work you're already doing.
Thanks for the invitation.
I was wondering, so in this policy, is this the only policy in which the excited delirium is mentioned? Are there any other similar type of mentioning in all the other policies that may in fact be confusing when we do any kind of cross-reference?
Off the top of my head, I don't remember it being in any other policies. Is it in the taser policy? It might be in the taser policy, that restricting
That's what we heard.
use of a taser against excited delirium. But I'll search against all the policies and see if it's anywhere else.
I'm just looking at consistencies. I mean, I remember the same conversation in that we were not going to be using that specific term into these policies. However, I don't know what the latest is.
Oh, okay, so there was a discussion around not using excited delirium?
That was not clear to me whether that was going to be used in the future or not,
Oh,
and
okay.
because it was not, this is the first time I've heard that it's been accepted in the medical community.
Mhm.
I actually heard otherwise, that it's not.
Okay.
But that's why I want to make sure we're consistent with some of the policies.
Yeah, I just returned from a use of force conference where there was some attorneys talking, and they're talking about how it's actually become a very consistent terminology coast to coast, especially in case law, where they're looking at constitutional rights violations and stuff like that. So they were using it regularly.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
First, Bob, I appreciate all of the work that you've done. I know that this is a lot of work, it takes up a lot of time, so I really do appreciate, how you working on this, and the rest of the team is working on it as well. Lieutenant, thank you too. I do have one question, and this is maybe a little bit outside of it, but Lila, for example, I have a young brother who's high-functioning autism. Someone approaches him. He automatically recoils because he doesn't know the people and stuff, So I'm not sure when I saw this, when it talk about medical considerations, I don't know if this is the right policy to deal with that, or is that a consideration or something? I think the working stuff is good, but then you have the people that have these different mental challenges or physical defects and stuff like that, and just by the mere presence of someone that they don't know attachment, and they may or may not have done anything. How do you respond to that, or is that something that's been taken on separately? I don't know.
Yeah, it is, and then I'm sure everybody's heard of our CIT, or Crisis Intervention Team training that we do, where our officer goes through a 40-hour training that revolves around not only mental health issues and people that function at different levels, and through that as well as ongoing training throughout our in-service. So it is addressed. But as far as having it listed in the policy here, I'm not sure that this would be the place for it. I can try and wrap my brain around that a little bit and see if there would be.
Well, I can appreciate that, and I can see that it probably doesn't apply to this particular policy, but if someone is going to be taken into custody and stuff like that, then certainly the training is ongoing, so I think that that's something that needs to be put out there so that people know that there is a little difference, and that the EPD is aware of this, and they're taking precautionary steps to kind of identify when they come into these districts, because you never know.
Oh, absolutely.
You never know.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, changing the scope a little bit. And then the medical condition thing, there appears to be two typos. On the third line, in this section 306.5, based on the apostrophe S, I would think either the or this would be the appropriate word. And then down in the last paragraph on the third line, witnessed by another, are you implying officer or person? Probably should put a word officer or person in there. So that's the third line.
Thank you.
Okay. Other than that, it reads, in my opinion, reads reasonably well.
Jim?
Well, I just have one question, or a couple actually. Same thing. Right under where it's medical considerations, where it has C2 next to it, and then up above there's a C1. What does that refer to?
Those are, Lieutenant Fellman did this edit, so those are edit comments that are in there, so when the actual draft gets published, finally, those won't show up.
Okay.
So it has, those are the notes in the marking. So it means there's a comment, if the comments were posted on the side where you could read, because every time a change is made, there's a comment added saying, this was made at this date and time based on commission input.
But if I hovered over that, would I see what the comments were? Because I didn't see any comments in the
Correct.
margins. So, and I just printed this, I didn't look at it online.
I got you.
What was included in the past is it depends on how you have your print setting set as to whether those comments show up on the site or not.
And if track changes,
This is a PDF.
Yeah.
About that.
So how would I, okay.
Are you
I guess I need to know how,
requesting to see the
because
comments?
normally I see the comments on the side, but, and this one, that's why I was kind of
Okay, so the versions normally come out with the comments displayed?
We can.
Okay.
Are you requesting that it be forwarded in that format in the future, Joe?
I guess I would.
Printed in Word with the comments and then made into a PDF? Okay.
If that's possible.
James?
I don't want to create a lot of extra work.
I don't know, it's
James
just clicking a button.
Jay.
Yeah. Well, I see Jim's point here, but I do want to offer one thing is that I know that my experience and Jim's experience as well, working on the policy screening and review, when they do all that work and they bring it here, this is their version of a completed work, and want to know if the board, if the commission is ready to submit this based on their recommendations and stuff. So if in the past, one of the things that really kind of got a little next to me is that all those hours and hours and hours of work and stuff that policy screening board has put in, outreach committee has done and stuff, and then you come to the full table and stuff, and then it's just like just putting a piece of red meat out there, and people start tearing away. I mean, it makes it look like all the work that you put in, all the hours, and all of a sudden we're up for a discussion again. I think that once the committees bring these things forward, then we either say, hey, let's move forward with it, or there's some questions and send it back. Just my thought.
Bob?
Well, I can't speak for the other members of the committee, but James' colorful explanation of what happens to it after it gets here, I don't have any ownership on any of the language in any of these, and I think it's important that the commission have a chance to review what we've looked at, second guess us, take a look at it. If something they don't like, absolutely have a right to amend it or request an amendment, or send it back to committee for further review. So that's the process. I appreciate it if everybody doesn't completely pick it apart, typo in here and there, and little questions, fine, but, if we go back to going to the work, the point is well taken. If you go back to just digging in the very minutia of the report, wordsmithing it, then we're going to be in trouble. So, thank you.
I have myself next to the queue. I'd like to recommend this policy. I think it's well written. I like the portions that really speak to notifying personnel of the jail if someone's been in restraints or if they think they have a medical issue. I think that's really important. And I think that it would be a good idea to have the policy version that shows the comments on the side, because that will help folks understand not only the background of what has been changed in it already and the work that the committee's done, but it'll help, in some cases it helps explain, we get it already, the comments in it at the committee level, sometimes it helps explain whether a certain section is included because it's state law, where it's got a reference to an ORS, or the reasoning in some of the sections that you otherwise would have to tease out. And so that would probably be helpful for this full committee or full commission to see when it comes to this level. So that's a good suggestion. Juan Carlos?
I want to second the comments from Commissioner Manning in terms of bringing a full policy for consideration at this table. As member of that committee, of course, we work hard on many policies. I've also been a member of the policy or of the outreach and research committee. At the same time, I don't want to discourage the rest of the commissioners that are not part of these committees to bring up their perspective and their questions. But of course, taking into account that a lot of work already would have been done by the time it's presented. But again, I want to emphasize that I don't want to discourage non-members, because the reality is not everyone is able to be a part of the committee, because even the bylaws dictate no more than so many members. So I appreciate your comments. Hopefully we do a good job, a decent job into bringing policies before you, but I want to encourage folks to bring in their 5 cents to this. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. Bob, to clarify your motion, which was seconded and we're currently in discussion on, was your motion for both policies?
It was correct. So
Okay, so if the discussion is, if everybody has had their chance to ask questions and express any questions or issues they have with policy 306, are there any further discussion on policy 501-1 arrest?
So 501, obviously arrests when we're taking people's constitutional rights and restricting their freedom. One of the, if you look there at Part 1A2, the underlined additions underneath the 5 options for what you can do when you have the right to arrest somebody. We added that verbiage there. There was some suggestion that at the time there was no direction, it just listed what the options were and provide a little more direction to officers around considerations of how that choice is made. And so that's what that verbiage is meant to do. And I think that was the only one we added there.
Jim?
Just, yeah, a wordsmith, that way it's not really wordsmith. On the part that you did change, you have the word whether with EA instead of,
Yeah, yes, we do.
not that it's really wordsmithing, but it's spell checking. And can you tell me, I noticed this is a general order, and then we also have the policies in the police department. Can you explain the differences between the two?
Yes, this is, that's just in the draft form, that hasn't been converted over to be in the policy.
Okay, so eventually it will look like what?
Exactly. That's the last, part of the last piece of conversion over, so.
So in the last piece then, I noticed at the very end it has, James Hill, chief of police. Will that be removed? So
No, we're bringing it back. Yeah, so,
I imagine.
yes, that will have Chief Kern's name.
Okay, Chief Kearns has a question, and I have Joan Wonkardos in the queue. Chief?
My question has to do with the word necessary. What's the history behind that?
It's basically the term reasonable and necessary is kind of tied, that verbiage came from Tennessee Garner verbiage in terms of use of force. So that was the discussion that went around, and Justin can help me out if I'm misquoting it, but went around is the decision the officer makes should be, reasonable and necessary for the situation. So somebody shouldn't decide to arrest somebody just because they won't answer their questions, because they choose the right to remain silent. It's like, okay, fine, you're going to jail. So there needs to be a reasonableness and a necessary piece around why and enforcement actions have been taken. If it's the fact that it's necessary to take this person to jail because they're not going to cease their behavior based on what their actions are, or if they're just flat refusing to get off the front porch, then that's necessary and reasonable. Is that a good kind of definition around it? That makes sense? So does that answer your question, I think?
Well, I'll be deciding whether or not to adopt this language, so I'm really interested in what the commissioners think about this. What's the threshold for necessary? When we put people in jail who have stolen a car, is it necessary to put them in there? Are they going to steal another car if we don't put them in jail? Is it necessary to arrest somebody when they've been in a fight and they're getting in their car on their way home? Is it, although we put people in jail for that, and it seems reasonable to us to do that today. So what's the threshold for necessary?
I'll tell you what made me comment on this section is worries that people will be encouraged when being questioned about conduct they committed in the past to tell a story, and I've got the opportunity to cite you into court and release you. But if you don't want to cooperate with me, I'm going to have to arrest you because I've got enough evidence to do it. So what I brought up was addressing people's right to remain silent.
Okay.
To answer your question for now, Chief, there might be more
Well,
comments on that further.
I think that applies to a person's constitutional right to remain silent will not be considered when deciding whether to arrest. I think that sentence addresses what you just mentioned. But I just wonder what the threshold for necessary is. I mean, is it ever absolutely necessary to put somebody in jail? I guess if they committed murder and we're afraid they're going to murder again, that's pretty necessary. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we tell our officers you can only do it when it's necessary. They're going to ask, well, what's that mean? When is it ever necessary?
There might be some other comments. I got a couple people in the queue that might help answer what their perspective is on that too. So I have Joe, Juan Carlos, myself, and Bob in the queue. Joe?
Well, I was originally getting in for an extra A in circumstances. But I do think in terms of necessary, I mean, if you have violent offenders, I think you probably get into necessary there. Potentially risk of flight might be necessary. Continued, say the person is intoxicated and belligerent, in other words, the behavior is not likely to change, that probably makes the necessary threshold. But the other question is, do you arrest people who are not engaging in those kinds of things, who have been, let's take an example where, homeless people and their treatment is something that's something for me, or is an issue for me, where the person gets harassed for something that maybe other people will not, and their interaction with the officer is not as pleasant as it might be. Does that trigger an arrestable condition? Or is that unnecessary because the person is just mad because they're being harassed for something that normal people don't get harassed for? So that may not trip the requirement for necessary there. And I think that there may be some value to having that word in there and having some of those kinds of things defined.
I still have a question about this, so let me know how you have to deal with it.
Okay, so there might be some other folks here. So I've got Juan Carlos next.
I have a few questions in this section, and I'm sure there's other sections that are equally important, but one that comes to the front burner for me, it's section D under part 1 still, titled Strip Searches and Body Cavity Searches. So on strip searches, letter B, small b, it says strip searches will be conducted in the field only with consent. Are we, if you get anybody out here, is it consent by the suspect or a supervisor is consenting to?
Under the legal definitions, consent can only be given by the person whose that treatment is occurring to.
So I'm being arrested, I can consent or not consent?
Right. And nobody else can consent.
How do I know whether I have that option?
It would be explained to you. It would be the officers would say, "We're asking your permission. Will you or won't you?"
I thought probably it was the case.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it's actually as clear.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it's going to be clear for the officer.
Right.
I'm talking about it.
Right.
Us civilians may not
Yes.
be as clear. So
Understandable.
one thing to think about. And I was kind of curious about, in some of the sections we use should when describing actions, should be done in privacy of an officer who is the same gender, for example. And I was curious about using should or must or shall. Did we come into any kind of a general agreement into where is a mandate, where there is an option? Specific on this section where we're talking about having an officer search somebody.
And you're still talking about strip searches.
Yes.
As you know from doing policy work, we want to be careful about absolutes in policies that are likely to be utilized in extreme situations. So, if in an extreme situation, I could see this being used is if we end up somebody ends up running around downtown shooting people and has several firearms on them, and the person that either shoots them or gets them into custody and the suspect's a male and the officer's a female. that, it's very likely that that female officer is going to remove, pretty much anything that can hide another weapon, if they've had multiple weapons on them, up to, and it could include taking clothes off, to ensure that that person is safe and there's no more weapons. So we don't want to say you will never, because in an extreme situation, you may have to, for the safety of citizens and the officers there. Does that make sense? So that's where a should and, those type of words versus a must are sometimes used. Does that make sense?
Thank you. I'll wait the next round.
I have myself, Bob, and then James in the queue. Chief, back to your question on Section A2 with the new language that was added. I think that language that was used in the majority of the other policies that I've worked on is reasonable under the totality of the circumstances, is maybe what we're trying to get at here. So I'm going to make a suggestion that this language be changed to read, the arrest option you choose must be reasonable under the totality of the circumstances, if we're going to leave that first sentence in. Because I think that's consistent with other policies that we've worked on, as well as the case that's being referred to here, at least in the prior discussion.
If you need a second for that, I'll second it. I don't know if you're making...
Well, there's already been a motion and a second, so I guess I'm
asking
asking for a friendly amendment, yes, to the motion, which Bob made and Jesse seconded.
I made the motion, yeah, I was the maker. But for discussion, I'll allow it, sure.
Jesse, I think you have to.
Since I have
Friendly.
since I have a comment on it, I guess
Okay.
I'm next in the queue.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, Jesse needs to accept the friendly amendment.
oh, okay.
I'll accept it.
Bob?
And the thing I think I'm getting at here is, and what I'd like to point out is, that you've already made the decision to arrest, so everything else occurs after the decision to arrest, and these are the options you have. So if you take the fourth diamond and you look at it, the fourth one down, you see that that's for another agency, so there really isn't much choice there. If you're arresting someone on a warrant for another agency, you just hold until the other agency picks them up, so there isn't a lot of choice there. The first one, obviously there's some choice, but if you're releasing the person, no harm, no foul, that's the end of the story. The next issue, the fifth diamond, is to allow the person to post bail. Well, everybody's entitled to bail, even murderers, so at some point, you may not be able to make bail because it may be so high, or the judge may decide to hold you without bail. That's possible too, but those are options that the police don't have much control over, and so, I think the big issue here is whether to cite the person or book them. That's the problem. And I think police make decisions every day on who to book and who to cite and release, based on their knowledge of the crime, their knowledge of the patterns of crimes in the neighborhood, based on their understanding of this particular offender's recidivism in the community, and whether or not going to jail is going to be an option to prevent that person from continuing to commit those crimes, or whether a person in their first offense, say, is not going to commit crimes again and may be released and cited. So I think the decisions are made every day, and saying that they are, reasonable and necessary is what an officer goes through his mind. I think those two go together. I agree with what Lieutenant Reynolds said. This is something in the legalese that goes together. Reasonable and necessary are used in many police terms, and I just feel like it's okay to keep it in there, giving the person the extra added incentive to think about it when they do it, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. We just had a internal affairs case where the officer decided to jail someone on a noise violation instead of citing them and releasing them. They had a big investigation. The police, the Citizen Review Board had to go over that case and decide whether the officer acted reasonably, and they did. They decided in favor. They had received many complaints at this location and advised him not to continue with his behavior, and he did. And they didn't cite him. They took him to jail. And was it necessary? Probably, because of the circumstances, yes. Or you would continue the behavior if he didn't? Yeah. So I don't see a problem with it, but again, whatever the commission wants. Thank you.
I have James and then Jesse.
Oh, Bob, the case that you just cited there, I would like to say that there was more to it than you just said. It wasn't that cut and dry. That was a dispute between neighbors, and it was not that cut and dry. In view of where everything is going right now, Jim, I gotta say, I think that you are absolutely correct in order to have the original portions that are available to look at the previous language and stuff, because there are a lot of questions that are coming up about this. And without having a previous copy, with where the changes were or what the questions were before you, it'd be kind of difficult.
There weren't any other changes in this.
No other changes?
As far as I know, but Lieutenant Reynolds should.
There weren't.
Just this one.
So, but it would be, I have to take that back. I think that Jim did have a good point and stuff for other policies and stuff, so that you can have the background and stuff, how it did relate. So, I don't withdraw many things that I say, but I'll do this one. So.
Thank you. Jesse?
Thank you, Chief, for asking the question about what your concern was here. I think that this discussion is like right at the heart of what the police commission ought to be doing, talking about at what point you get to sweep somebody from what they're doing in their normal life and bring them to jail. Under the necessary or reasonable under the totality of the circumstances, I think that ultimately they're going to lead to the same thing. I would ask, why shouldn't it be necessary to sweep somebody out of their life and put them in jail? And necessary can be all of the things that Bob talked about. Those all make sense. And since you did bring up the noise, there have been a lot of people arrested since the university went into session, a lot of university students who ended up in jail over noise violations. I think that there's a concerted effort to crack down in the university neighborhood, let people know that they're going to go to jail if they have big parties. But going to jail over a noise violation was not an isolated incident.
Jim?
I have to agree with what Tamara said, that we've been consistent in all the other policies about saying reasonable given the totality of the circumstances. I would like to see that continue. I kind of had question marks on this whole section, and I do believe that necessary will throw big question marks in front of the police, and I think that they will. It's just an extra question that I don't want them to be confused about making that decision. I think with the reasonable totality of the circumstances, I think that's what they need. But that other part necessary, I think, really throws a real confusing point into this little sentence.
I have myself next to McHugh, and I don't have anybody else in unless there's somebody else that wants to get in. And I just want to remind everyone here that this sentence that was added only modifies the words right above it, not the full policy. And so it's just in reference to the options for arresting, not the decision to arrest. Once you arrest a person, you have the 5 options, and then the arrest option you choose must be reasonable under the totality of the circumstances. It doesn't go to the decision whether to arrest, just what option of these 5 options to use after you do. So, anybody else would like to get in the queue for discussion? If not, I'm going to call the question on the motion. It was already seconded by the.
Are you going to call the question on the amendment first, or are you going to call
It was a
the...
friendly amendment.
Friendly amendment, I allowed it. Jesse, second.
Yes,
So it's included.
yes. Any further discussion on the motion?
Just to make sure the amendment is included.
Yes, it was a friendly amendment. Bob accepted it, and Jesse is the second.
Could we get,
So and necessary will be removed.
Hearing no further discussion, I'm going to go ahead and call the question. Bob, can you restate your motion, please?
Again, to approve both policies 501 and 306, and in the case of 501 as amended, to read, it must be reasonable under the circumstances.
Under the totality of the circumstances.
Under the totality of the circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, and thank you, Mrs. Ennis, for coming to stay and helping us work through the questions on those policies.
My pleasure.
And the next item on our agenda is break, which is early in our meeting today. Unless somebody wants to advance the theory that we should hear the chief's report before we have a break, because it's very early in our meeting. Anybody have a preference one way or the other?
I'll move that we continue and just skip the break until we need a break.
Okay, just go ahead and delay the break until after the chief's report then. Is that okay, Chief?
You bet.
Or did you need a break?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
So I'd like to turn the time over to the chief for his report.
All right, thank you. And I made some notes about the comments, the community comment about charging the judge with official misconduct. If you'd like a little context on how that statute's been used, I'd be happy to do that. And then Zach mentioned the ordinance that granted an exception to the public drinking ordinance. City Council passed some years ago. I was fairly close to that whole thing. I'd be happy to talk about that too. Give you a few highlights that we've had recently. Our crime prevention unit, property crime is continuing to go up. What we've seen in the first 6 months of 12 is that crime in the United States continues to go down. Crime in Eugene has been going up this year, and crime in Springfield has been dropping off, I'm told, by the Springfield Police Department. Specifically property crime. Violent crime has gone down in the United States. And there's a probable relationship between the number of jail beds, our ability to incarcerate people and prevent them from continuing to commit crimes. But the police department is determined to reduce crime anyway, to find a way somehow to reduce crime with the resources that the community has and that we have. Our crime prevention unit has really taken on this challenge. And in the last couple of months, when they've seen, we have the weekly data-led policing strategy meeting where crime analysis presents us with some slides like you'll see here in a minute. The crime prevention unit has seen those hot spots that have been identified by the crime analysis unit as the locations where we need to focus our energy. And they've gone to those neighborhoods door to door and invited the people, told the people there what they can do to prevent crime, and also invited them to neighborhood meetings. And drawing a causal relationship between our effort and a change in crime is something that's really hard to do without careful collection of data and someone to help us analyze it. But crime has gone down when they've done this. And in fact, neighbors who've gotten a little information about the people, the suspects that are operating in those neighborhoods have helped us arrest people committing crimes in those neighborhoods. So it's been pretty successful, and we've had a couple of, we've followed those efforts with a couple of neighborhood meetings that have gotten considerable attention. And then, of course, our seniors on patrol, they have a Halloween night patrol they do, hand out stickers, but mostly they just create, trying to make neighborhoods a little bit safer where there's a lot of small children walking around late at night. And then we got 2 people graduating from the State Police Academy tomorrow, so that's good. That'll help our staffing a little bit. And then my community activities in the last month. In October, I was invited to a church. This happens occasionally, where I'll be invited to speak between services on local issues. This is a church that's invited the mayor, the city manager, and myself to speak on separate occasions about what the challenges are in Eugene, what the strengths of Eugene are, what are the most critical things that we need to address. So that was the kind of presentation that I made there. I went to the state NAMI, National Association of People with Mental, someone might need to help me here. Mental illness, thank you. Banquet up in Portland, and it was a pretty moving experience. I go to the local Lane County event every winter. This one, we all drove into Portland, and it was total gridlock. And it was about 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night. And it took forever to get into Portland, find a parking place, and then get to the banquet. The MC was a local television anchorman, and he told us everybody was complaining about the gridlock, and he said the reason for it was because a suicidal subject, a person with mental illness, had committed suicide off the Hawthorne Bridge. So it really centered the whole thing, and it was an amazing banquet. I'm glad I went, and there's a lot of good work going on in Oregon, and more that all of us could know about NAMI. And then also was on a restorative justice panel, Community Mediation Services, which has a different name now, hosted a couple of speakers, one from Canada, one from the United States, who are well known in the study of restorative justice. And so the public defender, Greg Hazardbedian, and I, and these two gentlemen, and trying to think who else was on the panel. We talked about, the challenges in Wayne County for criminal justice and the potential for using restorative justice in some cases as an alternative to incarceration or coupled with incarceration. So it was an interesting discussion. I think there's definitely places in Eugene where we could use this. And I don't know that it's necessarily less expensive than incarceration, but it is known to be more effective in many cases than incarceration. Made a presentation to the city, the Citizens Police Academy, like many of our officers and detectives have recently. I was on a KTNW live radio interview, and normally we cover many topics. This time the only topic that they wanted to discuss was our animal shelter, which has been an exciting subject. Made a presentation at the Rubicon Society and gave them a tour, our staff gave them a tour of the new building. And then the Gang Prevention Symposium that was scheduled for February has been moved to January 11 and 12. I'm pretty confident that that's really when it's going to happen. A few incidents that happened this month that you might find interesting. We're investigating the assault on a Lane Transit District bus driver that happened on October 4th. We have a number of people who ride the bus who suffer on occasion from severe mental health or in crises, and bus drivers are often find themselves in confrontations with them, and that might be what led to this assault. We had an attempted theft or an attempted robbery on October 15th at Wells Fargo Bank, and we had a robbery and assault of a newspaper carrier on Friday, the morning of Friday, October 12th, and that's a little frightening. Newspaper carriers aren't all teenage boys anymore, but they are and kind of vulnerable out there in the dark hours of the morning. So that was an unusual robbery for us here. The party response patrols in the West University neighborhood, the near campus neighborhoods, have been busy this year, and we have incarcerated more people for violations rather than issue citations. And really our whole strategy is about preventing a riot, because they are very hard on the neighborhood, and the entire neighborhood has changed drastically because of the growth in that kind of behavior in the last 2 decades. So that's what we're doing now. We're also working on the social host ordinance. I'd be happy to talk about that a little bit too, if you like. Would you like me to answer questions now or at the end?
It's up to you.
No, well, real quick, Chief, I was just wondering, U of O Police Department, in order to deal with, because most of this stuff is dealing with the students and stuff, are you have any idea how they're coming along with that, and will that take some of the sting away from EPD where they can concentrate in other areas?
Yeah, about 2/3 of the people that we contact on Friday and Saturday nights are U of O students. The U of O's police department has a long way to go before it's going to be able to help us with anything off campus, really, in any meaningful way. They hope to someday get to somewhere between 25 and 30 police officers. But right now, the only police officers they have are managers, and then they'll start hiring officers. In fact, we're going to help with their training, and we'll do the field training for them. So but in the long-term vision, I don't know how far out, I don't know if it's 5 years or 10 years, I hope that the police department on campus will be able to help, at least assist us with the work we do over there.
Okay.
Can I ask about the change in approach? You said you're arresting rather than citing.
Mhm.
Is that to remove the potential riotous element from the area, or is it to, you talked about the rationale for changing your...
The philosophy is to reduce the likelihood of a riot and change the behavior. And we are authorized to arrest and lodge people in jail for the crimes that we've been arresting them for many years. And the effect of issuing citation after citation is not very impactful. I think it might have been last Halloween, for the first time, we decided we don't want to have a riot. It's dangerous to us, it's dangerous to the people in the street, and causes a lot of damage. So we're going to arrest people for crimes. We hope that it has the effect of calming down the neighborhood. And I'm still waiting to get a report on what the experience has been like. We don't plan to do it all year long, but we did intend to do it for the first few weekends of the year, which is what we've done so far, and Halloween.
That's a good segue for me to introduce our new city council representative, Claire Surratt, to the rest of the group. They don't have their names in front of them, so
I
won't go
apologize
around
for being
at this
late.
time. Thank you.
All right, and then Officer Randy Ellis, I think this might be the third or fourth year in a row that he's ran this program to raise money and collect clothing and sleeping bags and blankets and that sort of thing to give away to the homeless people in West University Business District. And it's been a pretty successful operation. Pretty generous of him to do that. We had many complaints. Our communications center was flooded with complaints about aggressive door-to-door salespeople in the last few weeks. Anybody have any visitors to their homes? We didn't either. But everybody who called us apparently did. This happens a few times a year. They'll knock on the door and then they find their way inside a person's house. And sometimes they're committing a crime, but usually they're not. They're just very aggressive individuals. Yes?
Just to respond to that, earlier this year, I did have one. These guys were very persistent, trying vacuum cleaner salesmen. One person showed up first and, hey, no, I don't want that. Then all of a sudden this other guy just appeared. And he's almost like he's going to force his way into the home. After I had a heart-to-heart with him, then he decided to back off. But he went next door and told my neighbor that I referred them.
Oh.
So that's another tactic that they use as well. They'll go, if they can't get you, then they get your name and stuff, then they'll go to the next door neighbor. Well, so-and-so referred me to come over there to your home for this product and stuff, and that's not true. So that's another tactic they use as well. After they get your first name or something like that, that's all they need is a first name, and they'll go with it from there.
Yeah. And then we had criminal mischief of a downtown food cart. There's a couple of food carts that set up, 3 I think. Today there were 2 in the Broadway Plaza, Broadway and Willamette. And one of them came back in the morning and found that their part had been damaged and had to be repaired. Electricity torn out, that sort of thing. Our violent crimes unit arrested a man who works on the U of O campus for sexual abuse, and he had a number of victims, none of them on the University of Oregon. There's no evidence that he committed any crimes on campus, although we're continuing to study that, see if anything like that did happen. And then we had an assault suspect that was arrested after the person who was assaulting was defended by a bystander. The bystander is a 65-year-old Marine, a veteran, who tackled the person to the ground and held him there until police arrived. And then, yes.
The cart vandalism and criminal mischief, paper reported that, I believe the paper reported, I remember reading the story about the victim had been having people tap into the electric at night after she closed down, and taking the electricity from using it for people that were in the square, and she felt there was retaliation. Was that correct?
There's a theory that because we have people who will plug their electronic devices into outlets downtown, and there's a theory that because she scolded somebody for doing that they might have damaged her card. But I don't know if there's anything to that. I don't know.
Thank you.
Okay, and what you see here, I'll just remind you of how the weekly crime tactics meetings happen. The watch commanders meet with the east side captain and the west side captain, and the investigations sergeants are there also. And the crime analysis unit goes throughout the entire city, slide by slide, showing where concentrations of crimes are, and included in the data, all we have here is data, included in the data is the intelligence that we gather from offenders out there in the world and others about who we think is committing those crimes. So we tie data and intelligence together in this presentation. You only get the data side because the intelligence is protected, not allowed to share that. It's that combination of information that our crime analysis uses to recommend what the areas in town, areas of concentration should be for our strategy in the next week. Those happen on Wednesdays when the crime, and then the managers, the watch commanders and the captains come up with their plan for addressing the crime that's there. And so that's the week of that's represented here. In the previous week, the crime analysis unit had picked this area between 2nd Avenue and 18th Avenue, Chambers to Lincoln, because, as you can see in the map, there have been so many car clouts, thefts from vehicles, that's the green squares, auto thefts, those are the red squares, and burglaries, which are the blue squares there. So what you don't see here is the time of day. Sometimes we'll have many car break-ins in one part of town at night, and many residential burglaries in another part of town that happen during the day. So the nighttime officers will focus on, the crimes that happen at night. The daytime officers will do it during the day. So what we see in this chart is that 42 arrests or citations in lieu of arrests were made in the focus area. 36 citations or uniform traffic citations were issued, and 23 field interview cards, which means we also contacted 23 people that were suspicious. We gave field interview cards to. And burglaries were lower the next week. There were 3 residential burglaries, 1 business burglary, 2 car break-ins, and 2 stolen vehicles. But, I wish I could say, oh, see, we brought crime down, but there's so many variables that we can't account for. But that's the intent. In the next slide, you see that the area of concern was 11th to 32nd, Jefferson to Harris. This is a huge area, so saturation patrols aren't going to affect crime a whole lot. And you see that our arrest numbers are very high. That's because it includes the university, West University neighborhood, where we're making a lot of arrests and issuing a lot of citations. And the following week, crime appears to have gone down. 5 burglaries, 10 car break-ins, and 2 stolen cars. In the next slide, you see the city look for a week. The week that's under review had only 26 total burglaries. Previous week, there had been 29 across the city. 8 stolen cars. The previous week, there had been 5. 50 car break-ins the previous week. So the numbers are pretty similar, not a lot of change week to week. When you look at the 4 weeks citywide, this is just an image of over a course of a month, what's crime look like, and you see that it concentrates in certain areas. A lot of car break-ins around the university and downtown, more up in Bethel, Danabo area there. Whose ward is that? Oh, that's really yours, isn't it? Yeah. And you find that when they aren't in the downtown area or in the near campus neighborhood, they're around highly concentrated residential housing units. And then, if you look in what's known as, back up, please. If you look in what's known as Beat 1, which is the Ferry Street Bridge area, you see a cluster of blue squares in the upper right-hand corner of the map up there. Those are residential burglaries. So somebody was breaking into houses in that neighborhood, and so that happened to be one of the places where we focused our attention that week. Oh, my point. Well, I can't see. I have to put my glasses on. Okay, and the next one, let's see if we're on the same page there. Oh, yeah, stay on that for a second. What you see is also on the upper right-hand corner of the slide is the comparisons of burglaries, all these crimes, from the total in 2011 to the year to, not the total for 2011, to the year-to-date 2011, year-to-date 2012. So through, I'm guessing this is through last week, there were, in 2011 at this time, there were 897 burglaries, now there's 939. So you can see burglaries are up, unlawful use of vehicles, stolen vehicles are down. That's probably because of technological improvements to cars. Car break-ins are down, and I'm very confident that that is because of the work that our crime prevention unit's doing, because there's just no other explanation. We're not incarcerating more people, but we've done a very good job of saturating neighborhoods, radio time, and our work around the Auxin Stadium on football game days, that's massively, in our view anyway, changed patterns of car break-ins. And then when you look at the chart at the bottom, you can see what the percentage growth has been this year. It isn't spiking like we've seen before. When we had the jail bed reductions, 84 jail beds, from 08 to 09, we saw like a 23% increase in crime. Springfield didn't have their jail at that time, and we had not started this strategy. Now, we're just seeing a much smaller increase. It is going up, whereas in the rest of the world, it's not. I like to think it's our deliberate efforts that are making a difference. Okay, and then on this slide, I think what we're looking at is the crime analysis recommendation for the week that we're in right now. So today's Thursday. Yesterday they met, and the crime analysis unit told the managers these are the areas you need to focus on. And this is based on data and intelligence. All right, and then we look ahead. This winter, notice we're not using months anymore because it's so hard to predict when construction will be completed. This winter, we'll be moving into the LCC downtown building. That'll be our substation.
That's great.
Yeah, we'll be asking the city council for, in supplemental budget 1, to add $32K to our annual budget to pay for the lease on that. And we'll be using some carryover funds to pay for equipment that we need in the office space, and it'll be good space for us to work out of, and our officers will be more efficient because they'll be down there. The student housing portion of the project will be done about the same time. Yeah, if you haven't seen it, the space is right across from the atrium building on Olive Street, so it's right in the middle. It's right where you want as much visibility as you can get. So it's a good deal we worked out. The annual Oregon, this isn't right, the Oregon Peace Officers Association banquet. It's not the Oregon Chiefs of Police, Association of Chiefs of Police, the Oregon Peace Officers Association, which is very different, is having their annual banquet here on November 16th, and our honor guard, one of our honor guard members, David Natt, will receive an award for the work that he's done to organize the honor guards around the state. And I think that's it. Pardon me?
The marketing?
Yeah, that's it.
We have Juan
right.
Carlos and then Jane send it to you.
Objectives.
Juan Carlos?
Chief, as usual, thanks for taking the time to put all this data together and for sharing quite a bit of info that you can bring to the table, and also the activities. I'm pleased that you've chosen to share all the activities you've been engaged in throughout the months. I think it's important that that visibility continues out there with because of the mission and the goal you want to have out there. One of the things that I want to comment on is on trends. Crime, that, as you noted, it's changing, but I don't want to lose sight of that in fact, some crimes are not even reported. And so we have to also make that part of the conversation, that some of the folks that I work with directly, they simply just choose not to report, and some of them have had their cars breaking or even their homes broken into, so it may not be as significant, but still has to be part of the picture. I was kind of curious, in when you have the information as far as the University of Oregon Police Department, I really don't know where the boundaries would be, whether it's just campus. I know that U of O actually owns property in other places that are not immediately connected to the university, so I would be curious to see where those boundaries might sit, because that's going to be important to form the policies we might be suggesting. In the meantime, do you know when you are needing the help of the sheriff, or the sheriff needs to help making a contact or making a stop for you? They see a behavior, they see a crime, they'll contact EPD and say, can you pull over a car, and then to get into that. Do you see the same thing happening with the University of Oregon, in which you do that back and forth, or will it be different?
Yeah, we've been, since for as long as I've been working here, we have a crime happen where we're looking for someone, our drunk driver, or someone threw a rock through a window and they're wandering around in that part of town. We'll notify the university's police department. Of course, it's been the Department of Public Safety, and they'll be on the lookout for those folks. So I expect the same level of, support from them as we get from the other police agencies. Is that what your question was trying to get at?
Yeah, I know there's a lot more to look into once it's up and running, but I want to see what the relationship is going to be, and what those boundaries might be in terms of policies and things like that. So one more question. So, Crime Prevention Unit, I have high hopes for that. I know they're very active out there. I've spoken to just about everyone that have their own section in the city. I have high hopes. Do you know if they're planning any kind of reaching out to maybe high school or young adults to be part of it, or be trained in that, or is that even considered?
I don't know what work they're doing with youth. Mostly they try and hit those places that are going to maximize their message. So they go to employers, they talk, we have school resource officers that work with children in the schools. They go to managers of apartment complexes, because then just one or two people can spread a message more effectively than one crime prevention officer going to 1,000 apartment doors. So that's what they look for, those sweet spots in the community that can get out to as many people as possible.
I also appreciate Sergeant Barong that she continues to go to the radio and bring the message that way, so I hope that continues.
Yeah.
James?
Yeah, again, hey Chief, very, very effective presentation. Appreciate that. I always look forward to seeing the little ledgers and stuff, saturated. It does raise concerns. Have the pattern of the burglaries in particular, is there any kind of indication that is individual, or is that some type of organizational type activity because of how they cluster in particular areas and seem to shift?
We don't see organized crime groups committing burglaries. If there are some, we're not aware of them, but I think we would be. We do occasionally see groups that steal cars and part them out, and they'll have what are known as chop shops, usually outside of Eugene. And those aren't common. In Oregon, cars aren't stolen from chop shops like they are in other states. It does happen, but not to the extent it does there. Mostly it's joyriding. Someone going from one place to another.
So most of these burglaries are just independent entrepreneurs, freelancers that are out there. And I noticed one thing about them, so that they are pretty sophisticated. For example, in my area, we had 2 homes out there that were burglarized, broken into, and they stole everything out of, I mean, they moved the ranges, the appliances, and took doors and everything else out of that. So they are very complicated in what they're doing. That's why I was wondering, if it may be some indication of some type of organization, because they got to move the stuff someplace.
Yeah, they, it could be that it's happening, I won't say it's not, but most are individuals or couples who just work a neighborhood, They knock on the front door and when no one answers, they go in the back, or they go in through open garage doors. They break into houses during the day when they know most people are at work. They go to those neighborhoods where where the houses are likely to reside two-income families. And it's not that complicated. And then getting rid of stuff is easier today than it's ever been in the history of time, with the way you can unload things on Craigslist and other internet sites and at pawn shops. Our pawn detail is actually pretty effective at identifying stolen property. We're asking for a change to the ordinance which would do a couple of things. It would lengthen the amount of time, you'll hear all about this, it'll lengthen the amount of time that pawn shops would be required to hold property so that we have a better chance of recovering it, and it would also increase some penalties for violations. It's so profitable that an unethical pawnbroker would choose to commit a violation because the fines are so low and sell and resell property rather than not violate the law.
Bob?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, and appreciate again your time and your efforts. Your crime prevention unit especially is to be commended for the work they do, and not just educating the public, but going through the neighborhoods now, I see, and talking to them, but also the leafletting they do in the neighborhoods and dramatic changes in crime. If you're a public-minded citizen and want to know about your neighborhood, I've said this before, we've got a couple of new additions to the committee. CrimeReports.com. They have an app for that now. It's, with your iPad or your iPhone, either one, and you have the map. Within your neighborhood, you can blow it up to take it to where you want to, so you can see your street a little bit better, or maybe this is the Train Song neighborhood, Jesse, so you know what's going on in your neighborhood there. All you got to do is sign up for the app. It's free, and they'll send you alerts. You sign up for alerts, and you can limit what you want to see to burglaries or thefts, or you can add everything, whatever you want, and they'll send it to you, and you'll get the alert about some crime in your neighborhood, and you can go right to where it was and find out what. You won't get a lot of detail, like you said, but you'll at least know what's going on in your neighborhood. So I recommend it to people. Know what's going on, and you're better educated about what's happening in your neighborhood. Thanks.
I have myself next in the queue. Chief, I was wondering, I think I heard that the price of some metals has gone up again. I think copper, I heard for sure. Has there been an increase in metal thefts in the last couple of months?
I haven't seen that kind of report yet, but as it goes up, we will see more theft.
Jim?
I think there were 3 items that you mentioned that if we wanted to hear more about, that you would be willing to talk about. I would love to hear them.
We have time.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Well, I think, excuse me while I get my notes here. One of them had to do around with official misconduct. This is one of the least used statutes in ORS. And the way official misconduct in the second degree reads, I'm only brought this up in case you were curious after hearing Deb Fish's comments. A public servant commits the crime of official misconduct in the second degree if the person knowingly violates any statute relating to the office of the person. The way this is typically used would be if a police employee, for instance, runs an evidence unit or a property control unit, and they decide to take things out of the property control unit and sell it illegally to somebody. They're committing the crime of, misuse of property, but theft by receiving, by selling something that doesn't belong to them. But they're doing it in the capacity that they have because of their unique access to the property. So that's where that person would be charged with official misconduct. Occasionally someone will think, well, that police officer conducted a search for drugs found them, charged the person with a crime of drug possession, put them in jail, and the judge later determined that the search was not constitutional, it violated their Fourth Amendment rights. That officer should be charged with official misconduct. Well, that's not how the statute is used. And so the district attorney, the kind of conduct that a district attorney might engage in that would lead to this would be if he used his authority as a district attorney to give somebody a benefit that they could only have because he's the district attorney. It's not lawful for them to have that benefit. If a sheriff gave, if a judge married people who can't lawfully be married, a father and daughter, for instance, that judge would be committing the crime of official misconduct. But a judge's rulings, there's another avenue to challenge those. It's not usually in the course of charging them with an offense. So, and then the ordinance, yes?
Just a clarifying question there. So, in terms of the judge's ruling, does it matter? I mean, presumably the officer made the arrest in good faith, believing that he was doing what he should be doing, so therefore there's no misconduct. But in a case where there's some kind of knowing that this person didn't commit that crime or some other pretext for the arrest, could that lead to official misconduct?
It could, yes. So if we have an officer that's out there breaking into houses of drug dealers, then that person might also be charged with official misconduct in addition to burglary and whatever else they're doing. Yeah. And then the drinking around Autzen Stadium, the history there is that I think in 1980-something, the city council passed the public drinking ordinance, drinking on unlicensed premises, and applied to Eugene. There's a few exceptions in the ordinance. And then the DAC football team became popular, or became successful, and created all kinds of problems for us. And tailgating grew around Autzen Stadium, and then it was this huge party of unlawful drinking around Autzen Stadium. And so the city council chose, I think around 2002 or 2003, to address this discrepancy, because on game day, a police officer would have to walk through these tailgates in one part of town, while in the other part of town, we're responding to complaints about people drinking in public on the same day and issuing them citations for it. So to address that, they changed the ordinance so that on game days, in certain areas around Autzen, not the entire city, but in certain areas, it's lawful.
But there's the property owners have some responsibility, though, in those exception areas. I thought, wasn't there something like they had to hand out flyers or rules or something, the people that are tailgating on their property?
That's right. They need to have signs, and the ordinance calls for the size of the sign and the height of the letters that explain what the rules are. I forget what they are right now.
Yeah, I forgot too, but it's not just a free-for-all. Those property owners have some responsibility for making sure that the people who are tailgating on their property are informed about what is allowed there and what's not.
That's right, and the hours, and I think it's 2 hours before and until the end of the game.
Yeah.
And it is also applies only to places kind of adjacent to the stadium, right? We can tailgate
There is a map.
north of Beltline.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, you can't go to the Fred Meyer parking lot. But yeah, there's a map. I think there might even be a map of the ordinance because some property lines are carved out. All right, that's it.
Okay. Any other questions for the chief? Okay. That concludes the chief's report, and we'll go ahead and take a 10-minute break and reconvene at 7:13.
So were those items because of complaints that Deb Frisch brought up?
No, there were public comments, and so I just offered to talk about
Because
it.
I know she was upset about the tailgating ordinance way back when it passed.
Oh, somebody else mentioned it tonight.
If there's any way to get some report, maybe sometime in the next year, about the amount of rapes that have happened in that drinking district, I'd be interested, because I think it's a pattern.
It wouldn't be too hard to learn that.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Can you commission that? 3 years, 3 years.
On game day? Zach, did you want to know just on game day or in that area in general?
Well, yeah, I
Well, you
just kept
compare.
hearing a different report, and it would be a month later, and it'd be also on game day, so it just seemed kind of like Groundhog Day or Ground Duck Day or something. Just history just kind of was repeating itself.
Yeah, we can.
I knew what you meant, I've seen the movie. Many times.
Yeah, over and over.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my favorite movies, besides my cousin Vinny.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
So welcome to the city council.
Thank you.
So you'll be busy for the next 4 years.
Very. Yes. Hey.
Nathan Reynolds.
Nathan, Claire's right next to you.
I was going to expand if you're interested in your question about the change in philosophy of arrest. And it's kind of transitioned over a couple of years. And because as you know, the population over there is about a 4-year cycle. And so something happens and then they figure out that's a bad idea. Well, 4 years later, you have a whole new set and they scrap. And so basically, at the beginning, in the fall, and in the spring, what we try to do is an educational approach. And educational meaning not having a conversation, though that is part of it. You know, there's a lot of community contacts, the university health, a lot of that stuff goes on. But the actual enforcement piece, because what happens is the students get out there and they want their own drink, and the old approach of, here's your ticket, you know, don't do it anymore. Okay, well, they walk down and open their next beer, go to the next party. And it just, feeds on itself, everybody gets more drunk. And the other thing they're finding is that when they get those tickets, all they do is call mom and dad and say, hey, I need more blood. Can I have $350? And so there's no impact to the kids. So we've been trying to work for years and years and years to get the university involved in terms of their having an impact. And that's beginning to happen. The university's starting to realize this is their problem too. So the beginning steps are occurring there. But what we found is that when, even, and we'll do it a lot of times, again, in the beginning of fall, as spring comes on, our mind is that not even taking them to jail, but the people that are walking around for arrestable offenses, bringing them to, it used to be at City Hall, but now it's here in groups, and processing them here. So now there's an hour and a half or 2 hours out of their night. Their buzz is coming down, and it's that inconvenience piece that maybe it's not such a good idea to walk around and drink on the street.
Well, I'm sure it scares the crap out of some of them too.
And that's part of it too. It's a whole different message putting handcuffs on and getting in the back of the jail van than getting a piece of paper saying you go to court. So that's the change in the philosophy on it, basically, in a nutshell.
That was kind of what I was thinking you guys were thinking, so that makes sense. So I don't know if you were, I can't remember if you were on the, how long have you been on the police commission?
Since July.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I used to work for the ACLU of Oregon.
Yeah, I knew that.
I used to come to these meetings and sit where Jackie's. It's different.
So, were you on any of the other commissions?
I was, I was on the budget committee.
Oh, okay. Somebody had mentioned that.
Yeah.
And we were
And
on,
then Human Services Commission. No, I've been appointed, so I'm a current city council, I'm an appointed city councilor, and I'm city council-elect.
So like you said, the representative of the city council, because I was like, I'm not sure what her official status is.
Yeah, so I am on the council, yep, as well as,
I was just glad to have another. Feeling a little outnumbered with the men named Jay. His names start with J. Just Joe, Jesse, James, Jim, Juan, Carlos. Kind of like, okay, me and Bob, and I'm the only girl. Right. So, Linda, Caitlin, 6.
and Bernadette.
And Bernadette. So I was like, okay.
Yeah, it's true, it's a different makeup, it's true.
No, and enjoy the males we have on the commission committee.
No offense, you guys.
Still a little outnumbered sometimes. But
Especially when you're the one who's supposed to be running the meeting.
we have more women on now. There was a time when we didn't have anyone really on the commission, so they're just not here tonight.
Yeah. You can call me Claire.
See, this is different from me.
Okay, thank you. Well, I wanted to introduce you.
No,
Then I was like, well,
No, what you said,
what her title
what you
was.
said was just right.
Okay, good.
But I was just sharing with Joe about, yeah, I get to sit at the table now instead of
I know, right?
sitting in the back,
I'm very excited.
flinging little bombs.
But we don't know if we're going to have these.
I know, I don't know.
Next month yet.
Yeah.
We'll know.
Yeah.
So
It's up to the mayor.
Appointed by the mayor.
And you get to go home to the 2 days.
Yes, right, yes, that's true. I know lots of men whose names start with J. My husband and my son both start with J as well. I'm feeling a bit outnumbered.
But yeah, I guess, you and I sort of crossed paths a couple times during the homeless task force thing. And
That's why you look familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I videotaped the whole thing.
Oh, okay. Great.
And didn't sit on it. I sort of regret.
You attended.
I did attend, yeah. So I sort of allowed a couple other people to take spots, and they didn't bother to be very active. So
No.
I probably should have pushed for a spot on it. 2020 hindsight.
Well, you thought they were you thought you'd play your role and they'd play theirs, and
Exactly.
they didn't.
But yeah, I guess now that Fergus lost his election.
Jim is a Darla on Facebook.
Yeah, now that Fergus lost his election, Fergus McLeod, I'm the only Occupy person who wound up
I get to like
someplace.
hear all about what they're doing all the time.
And wasn't he running against
He ran for state rep, and what he did was he,
against
I
Bruce?
don't know what your role is.
I don't remember who his opponent was. It's
You know.
he doesn't live in Eugene. He lives a little ways out in Wayne County.
And my friend Sally.
But yeah, it's tragic that he decided not to run a campaign. He got on there and just then never did anything. And he wound up with 37% of the vote anyway.
I was reading that.
Which is like, excuse me, dude, had you gotten your act together,
Yeah.
you'd be up in Salem now as opposed to the bozo you ran against. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. That was tragic.
You know, my really good friend.
He had a real shot at it, I think.
Although if he had mounted more of a campaign, his opponent might have just swung back at him even harder.
Oh, I'm sure he would have, but I think he had a shot at it.
Yeah, I guess Bruce Hanna,
You know, like my really good friend in college.
one of those entrenched.
You know, that I just had.
Power dudes.
What were you looking for?
And you can't always.
But But this was an interesting election. I mean, even with all the voter suppression and probably flipping votes to, on electronic machines, they still pulled it off. I mean, it's
They
just,
did the work.
it's yeah, they really
In fact,
did.
I was on, I had a lot of fun.
I had a friend who was,
Because I originally set up my Facebook.
Key volunteer for the Obama campaign here in Oregon, and Oregon wasn't even in play, and
Yeah,
they put resources and they paid attention, and they were here working.
Yeah, they pestered me constantly in email, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I have really mixed feelings. I mean, certainly Obama compared to Romney is, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But still, Barack's got his kill lists and his drone war and
Oh, yeah.
all the rest of it.
Yep.
Far from ideal.
3 or 4 years, all the time.
Yeah, and then we need to see how the Attorney General responds to Washington and Colorado. Their
The marijuana thing. And the thing I'm more interested in is kind of his passing remark about cleaning up the electoral system. Maybe it's time to fix it.
But I don't ever get random.
And,
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to some people comment on that. I think he wasn't saying the federal government was going to fix it. He's just saying we as a country need to
fix it.
fix this.
But I think there's an opportunity to maybe put, because there's some pretty serious violations. I mean, Florida, the fact that it took them a couple of days to actually finish dealing with all the, all these lines and, the result. I mean, people were getting, bumped off it and still showing up, which is enormous.
Yeah.
And, but it was interesting. There was a comment. I think he took 93% of the black vote and 71% of Hispanics and 70-something% of Asians and a big chunk of women. So that's who elected him. And Yeah. I mean, it's interesting election, very interesting election.
I agree.
We'll see where it all goes.
I'm going to go at it from another way.
So you got any particular priorities, things you want to deal with on here?
Well, I'm not sure specifically on this commission. I was asked by the mayor to fill what the seats Andrea had been on. So, I mean, I definitely have an interest, but I haven't had a chance to kind of think of particulars, and I don't know if I'll be staying on. But definitely, public safety and I still have concerns around the downtown exclusion zone.
Which we're about to talk about.
Yep. So, want to hear, what people's thoughts are about how to phase that out and get rid of it. And then, folks in my ward, they're all on that map with the burglaries and such, so, public safety is definitely important, but, I pay a lot of attention to comments like Juan Carlos sharing that he knows people who are not reporting being victims, and I wonder why, and is there a lack of trust, or...
I mean, part of it is like, why bother? I mean,
I do think that's part of it, yeah.
One of the things, for example, I stopped driving several years ago, and by choice, and but I've had headlights and taillights on the bicycle stolen. So that seems to be the big thing at about $30 a pop. And I think they're being stolen for batteries.
And what about your bike? Is that...
The bike hasn't disappeared yet, and although I did lose, I had one of those odometer things, and that disappeared. Kind of talked to me while I was, it was something to look at while I was riding around. So how fast am I going? I go a little fast. But other than that, that's probably not worth replacing. But the lights, $30 a pop. You get them stolen 3 times in the last year. That's significant.
Yeah, definitely.
But stuff like that. But my whole thing is, I think you give the homeless a place to be, and I think a lot of the crime's going to go down.
Yeah, I think
that's what, what's his name, Camcar, Sam Camcar told us that it dropped 90% during the 2 months downtown. I was there.
Yep.
So that's the biggie, and this group hasn't really discussed that very much. I think now that the election's over and people are starting to focus again, it's time to bring that discussion up.
Well, I'm serving on the Human Services Commission. Again, at least till the end of the year.
Yes.
About time.
You have to have that coffee.
Village folks, pretty
I
close.
would like that very much. All right. You may.
Reserved for the record.
Hey.
So very sorry to be.
Hi there. Okay,
Different council meeting.
so the next item on our agenda is discussion about committee to create TAP in the downtown public safety zone, and Carter is going to lead us through the ins and outs of that. Carter?
Yeah, and I would invite the chief to jump in if I miss anything. So this is just a brief update on, in October 8th, the city council voted to extend the downtown public safety zone until November 30th of 2013. They made some changes to the existing ordinance that will take effect November 30th, 2012, by eliminating basically 4 kinds of offenses from the 90-day exclusions. And just as a quick primer, the 90-day exclusions are those that are granted by a judge before the underlying charge is determined or adjudicated. So someone is arrested for something, the police issue a notice to appear, the defendant appears at court, and a judge determines whether they are excluded for 90 days. If the underlying charge is dismissed or they're not convicted, that 90-day exclusion is vacated right away. But in any case, that 90-day list was amended to eliminate criminal mischief, possession of less than an ounce of marijuana, public urination and defecation, and illegal inhalants. So it reduced some of the offenses for which people could be issued notices to appear for that 90-day exclusion. It also, the council action also required that the city develop and maintain a database to collect name and offense for every person arrested or cited in the downtown public safety zone for anything, as well as the court disposition of people who were issued a notice to appear. And that database is currently almost done, and we'll begin collecting. We've got some test data for September, October, and we'll begin collecting in earnest in November to be sure that we're ready to be in compliance with the ordinance.
When the data is already collected,
Correct.
It's a matter of tabulating.
And formatting it in the right way. Yep. And lastly, the commission, or the council, made a motion when they approved the extension to create a committee with council input to develop a path to end the downtown public safety zone that would involve social services, public safety, prevention and enforcement, and that the city manager include a role for the Human Rights Committee in developing or reviewing that path. This is verbatim what the council asked for. Because of the role that the council spelled out for the Human Rights Commission, the HRC has already discussed this, and they made a motion that at least 2 representatives for that proposed committee be from the Human Rights Commission, and that the HRC be involved in both reviewing and finally offering its recommendations, and the final recommendations before it goes to the city council and the council decision. So, because it was something that the commission has discussed, because there was a role called out for the HRC, and because they have already taken a position on that, and because we're currently working on the charter that will define what that committee is, how frequently they're going to meet, what its composition is, what their scope's going to be, now seemed like the time to solicit input from the police commission about, did you also want to have a position, either individually, in which case it's just you weighing in and us taking notes, or collectively, which would be the way for you to collectively have a position is to make a motion and vote on it, and with an approved motion, then that can be the police commission's recommendation as well. That is why this item is on the agenda.
Okay, I have Bob and Jesse. If we get too many people raising their hand, I might do round robin. I want everyone to weigh in, I just don't know what order you're in. Because I've got Bob, Jesse. Joe, did you have your hand up? No. Okay, I've got Bob first.
Yes, I thank you for bringing this to our attention, Carter. This was a very important issue, and of course, important for the police commission to take a look at it because of that. And as you know, we held hearings on this matter and had people come to us and tell us what they felt about the downtown public safety zone. And it seemed to me at the time, and still does, because I haven't heard any changes, that the majority of the people who live in that area and also have businesses in that area seem to favor this as another tool in law enforcement's packet to help prevent some serious offenses down there that have been troubling to them for quite some time. So I'm not sure about the title on developing a path to end it as being the correct title. I think that immediately shows bias toward the fact that somebody doesn't want it anymore. And I think it's been a good, useful tool, and I'm going to recommend a motion to the commission to consider, and that would be to ask us to provide at least a representative to this committee, and also to ask them to give us an opportunity to review it in the same way that HRC is going to review it, to provide some input.
Is that a motion, Bob?
It is.
I call for amendment.
Wait, you need a second first. Thanks, Jim. Go ahead, Juan Carlos.
I to amend to new count to people.
Hang on just a second.
Is it a new queue or the old queue?
I already have some folks in the queue. Juan Carlos, can I ask you to hold your amendment? I don't think that takes precedence.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I have Jesse, then you, Juan Carlos, then Mike, and then Claire in the queue. So, Jesse?
I'm going to ask a question before a comment. It was unclear where the committee is going to come from, who's going to decide how many people are going to be on it. Do you...
It's a city manager appointed committee, and we're at the point now of offering recommendations on how that gets put together. And the term, the committee to end, create the path to end the downtown public safety zone was what the council motion was.
All right, and a comment. Everybody on the police commission's got their own opinion about what this should be. I don't think that we can send a representative from the police commission. I would have something different to say than you would. I think that the committee, and this was the feedback I was going to give tonight on this agenda topic, is that community input, not necessarily the people who are already on committees and commissions, but it should be put out to the community, hey, please, if you want to be on this committee, contact whoever it may be.
Juan Carlos? Thank you for waiting.
Now, I have some comment that I want to offer an amendment to send two representatives, at least two representatives, to this important committee.
I'll accept that, Brandon, then, if the secretary will accept it.
Thank you. Go ahead with your comment.
Thank you. Because the police commission has in fact been involved in gathering feedback from the public, and one time we made a recommendation, I feel a sense of responsibility for us to see that this sunset and transition actually happens with the voices of the community, such as represented in this commission. So in that sense, I hope that you will consider supporting this motion in terms of getting that voices out there in that committee. I also didn't realize there was a city manager appointment committee, and that kind of takes a different perspective. I assume that all of that will be, of course, it will be sent to the city council, but I'll be curious to read more and learn about how that's going to happen. So, thanks.
Mike?
Three things. The first thing, I suppose I could support the motion to send two people or to ask the manager to include two people from police commission. Excuse me. I would think it important that since there are divergent and different opinions at the table on this matter, that those folks, to the best of their ability, try to speak for the full police commission as opposed to their individual points of view, whoever would populate those chairs. And I would think that as a discussion point here, we could probably give them pretty good ideas about how the commission feels as a whole, even if we have to just vote on it at the end. I would say that you have, Bob, every right as an independent board and commission of the city to disagree with council and offer them different advice. If it's the will of the body that not be sunsetted, I don't see any reason in the world why you couldn't vote to say so and to make that recommendation. That's just my opinion. And then lastly, I disagreed with council majority on this idea of sunsetting it permanently without a permanent solution. Now, as the guy who kind of pushed pretty hard in the first place to start this thing, I would say that there's been a lot of discussion about what it's a remedy for. Some people have talked about it as a remedy for the number of officers downtown, which of course it isn't. This is a remedy for the number of jail beds that don't exist, and they're about to get smaller in number. My understanding is 142, 140, something like that. We're going to go down to, we're going to lose another, what, 13? 12. So the problem is getting worse, not better. And this is designed as a solution to that problem. So I would hope that in the process of our discussion, we would, if we're going to go along with the premise, we would certainly offer some manner of solution for or remedy for the problem itself. If if the body decides that it wants to go along with the council's premise that it should be sunsetted, then certainly a suggestion on how to remedy the problems associated with the lack of beds and take its place should follow.
Thank you.
Claire?
Can you restate the motion as amended?
Gene, I
The
mean,
motion
Bob,
is for
sorry.
to ask city council, or I guess in this case, the city manager rather, to allow 2 members of the police commission to serve on the committee and to request that the input be provided by the police commission prior to any final decision, the same as the HRC has requested.
Final decision on,
Final decision on by the full committee.
recommendation.
final decision about how this committee will be comprised, or final decision on the downtown public safety zone?
Review the recommendations of the committee before a final decision is made on whether to end the downtown public safety.
So that needs to be clear in our motion. And I think it needs to be clear that we are making a request of the city manager. We cannot
I
direct.
said ask,
Okay.
usually ask me.
But in your first statement of it, it didn't say ask. That's why I asked for it to be restated. I think that, I think it is the intention of the motion that the city council passed that this committee be created to look for a way to end the downtown public safety zone. I think it would be inappropriate for us to send representatives to the body with a different intention, to try to convince the council not to end the downtown safety zone. So that's my feeling on that piece. In terms of if the city manager did grant this request and we had representatives there, I believe this commission, I don't know if it was these same members, but has voted and made a recommendation on the downtown public safety zone. So I think that should be what the representatives take to the table is here's what the police commission has discussed about this. This is the position of the police commission. But I also agree with what Councilor Clark said about we do need to offer some remedies. I think individually we might all have different opinions on what possible remedies would be. On the break, Joe and I were just talking about Opportunity Village and the idea that when Occupy was down at Washington Jefferson Park, many of the incidents in downtown were much reduced because people were elsewhere and engaged in more positive activities. So, that could be in the mix of recommendations. I don't know if the police commission representatives would want to bring that forward, but, I think we would want to encourage creative thinking as well as representing the commission appropriately.
I have James, myself, Joe, Bob, and Juan Carlos McKee. James.
Well, I'm not that familiar with this since this is pretty new to me, but it is an opportunity, say if there was representation from this commission, that the Outreach and Resource Committee, since they're doing this and stuff, it may be an opportunity for them to function in that capacity. I don't know, just a thought.
Thank you. For myself, I have to frankly disagree with the premise that whatever position the police commission took on the DPSC isn't passed, that those same members exist on the commission today. So it's been a number of years since the police commission officially weighed in on that ordinance, and I don't think we have the same membership today, and we may not have the same discussion or outcome. So I wouldn't go back to past work of the commission on that as a reference point for where we might go with this in the future. I have Joe next in the queue.
I guess there's several points, and one of them is for many people, at least certainly that I've spoken with, there's the perception that the public safety zone was put in there as a way to deal with the homeless. There's a lot of talk about violent crime, but historically it's been applied pretty seriously to homeless folks. There is the issue of 2 people, which is this motion, but this group itself is probably fairly evenly split in terms of its thoughts around, for example, extending it or making it go away, or the reasons around it. Maybe what we could look at is if we're sending 2 people, the attempt is to represent the commission, but at the same time, maybe we want to split and send one who's pro safety zone and one who is anti. And that might be a way to get divergent voices into this discussion.
Bob?
Well, I mean, according to comments I heard a moment ago, perhaps we ought to send two people who are in favor of ending the zone, because city council does not want to hear from people who dissent from what they choose to vote for. Apparently, they want people, only hear from people who want to support what they're trying to do, and not people who would dissent against what they do. So, I'm not sure whether it would do any good. So, I guess I'm saying you would support it if you want. If not, yes, we have to leave it to council. We're going to make up their mind. Thank you.
They have Juan Carlos, Jesse, the chief, and then Mike and McHugh. Juan Carlos?
Thank you for the comments. Obviously, this discussion on this motion, it's probably a part of a much larger conversation, as Councilor Clark has alluded to clearly, in that this is part of a much larger conversation we have to have. I am looking forward to the state of the public safety. Hopefully, the Outreach and Resource Committee will set up a date, because that's going to be part of all of this. In regards to some of the comments I've heard, in the end, this is an advisory board. That's an advisory body. We have not asked city manager, the chief, or city council to do something that they don't want to do. We just, in anything that we're going to be doing, basically advising on anything. This is the chief's policies and the city council's programs, initiatives, and all that stuff. So I hope that we consider sending two people that are open-minded, that are willing to represent overall the collective voices of the police commission. Fortunately, we have had that kind of experience with the P.org. We sent two representatives that did a very decent job into bringing the voices of the police commission, number one. Number two, they were themselves able to bring back the information they've heard and reporting back to the police commission, so I think it's going to work. I hope that we consider this as an opportunity for us to, in fact, be an advisory to this committee and be of help to the city of Eugene and the charter. I'm confident that we're going to be able to send two people that are open, and of course, all of us are going to present our own opinion. You can't stop that. City council has the same thing. But hopefully, we'll be able to ask the two representatives to keep in mind the previous conversations we have had around this issue, and said, well, this is what has been discussed at the police commission. This is on the recommendations, and of course, bring the communication back to us, that we can send the messages back to the group, as we did with both Joe and John when we had the PR. So, have you considered those comments of mine?
Thank you. Jesse?
If you want to get on the committee that's going to be doing this and ask to be on it and go through the same process as everybody else, I don't think the police commission has a place on this. The HRC was specifically called out to be a part of it. The police commission, we're an independent body, and we can have all the hearings that we want and do what we want to with our own agenda. This is a committee that was put together, requested by council. What is the good of sending representatives from the police commission going to be? What are you going to show up and say, I'm from the police commission, and what is the point? I don't think it's our place to go asserting ourselves onto this committee.
Chief?
I think it might help to frame the purpose of the committee just a little bit differently than some of the comments I've heard. The committee's function isn't to determine the efficacy of the public safety zone. Another way to ask, for this committee to ask what its purpose is what would be an alternative to the public safety zone, or how could the public safety zone notwithstanding, what are methods, what are processes or programs or services that the city or the committee could provide that would make downtown safer, regardless of the existence of the public safety zone. So it's not really about, this committee's work isn't about the public safety zone. It's about an alternative to that. So I think what the city manager will probably be looking for is people who can think creatively and disregard the fact that there exists a public safety zone, but ask what instead could we afford to do. I don't intend to persuade the discussion, I just thought that there's another way of looking at it.
Thank you, Chief. Mike?
Thank you. The chief and Juan Carlos made the largest chunk of what I was going to say, and they did it better than I would have said it. I did want to, however, put in, Bob, that it's in the absolute best tradition of city boards and commissions as a whole to weigh in on important questions like this, and if they feel the need to disagree with the council. There have been, I can't count the number of times the Human Rights Commission has made a recommendation to council that was different from the majority's opinion. And so it's the absolute best tradition to do so. My suggestion that the commission ask as a whole to participate in an official role was because the council looks at that person's voice, I wouldn't say differently or with more weight, but it gives flavor to the role of the advice that they hear from that particular person, especially if it's been discussed at this table and that person or those people are intentionally trying to carry a larger purpose or a larger message to that group. That has an effect on council's decision, and it's an important one, I think. Whichever group it's from. For example, the Human Rights Commission will send 2 members, and they will certainly have a larger commission discussion that will inform what those 2 say. And that helps make it a richer decision for the council, too. But again, my central point was that this is about, we don't have enough jail beds to keep really bad actors off of the street. They'd be excluded to a very small room with no bars if we had the beds, but we don't. So this was put in place as a remedy. I like the chief's point that if this didn't exist, what else might we do? And that's the point of this commission.
Thank you. I have Claire and then myself on the queue. Claire?
Yeah, I also really appreciate Chief's framing for us and Juan Carlos's comment and Councilor Clark's. And when I made my prior comments, I was speaking for myself. I was not speaking for the council. I was not seated on the council when this vote was taken. But I do think that a formal commission of the city to send a representative to a body would need to do that with the intention of fulfilling the charge of the committee. And in this case, the charge is to look for alternatives or look for other things that might come into play once the downtown public safety zone expires, so that we can mitigate the problems that we've been trying to mitigate with that program. I appreciate, Tamara, what you said, that this isn't the same group that voted on the recommendations in the past, so I guess in terms of this particular proposal to send 2 representatives, I am concerned, kind of, Jesse expressed it a little bit, how those 2 people would represent this body. So if we do pass this motion, then I would like us to figure out how we give direction to those representatives. And I think I'm kind of torn about this idea of whether we should have formal representatives or not. I appreciate what Councilor Clark was saying about the Human Rights Commission, and I do feel that folks who serve on this body also get a particular perspective on public safety and the challenges of public safety that people who don't serve on this body don't have. So I think that is a valuable perspective to bring to the committee that the city manager is going to be setting up. I don't know if there needs to be 2, but.
I'll be supporting the motion because it is within the advisory body to advise, it's written in our charter, to advise the city council, the city manager on matters of public safety. That's what our charter says. That's what this is all about. So I don't understand the perspective that we don't have a role in weighing in on this. Just because we weren't assigned a role when the city council discussed it, I think that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be asking for a role, and I think we'd be derelict in our duties, given our charge in our charter, if we did not ask to be at the table. It's certainly up to the city manager not to entertain our recommendation, but I think we definitely need to ask. I don't have anybody else in the queue, so if there's no further discussion, I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor of Bob's motion, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no.
No.
Thank you. Motion carries. The next item on our agenda is,
Was there any abstentions?
sorry.
No. It's fine, why not?
Okay, and so
We're gonna have that
then,
discussion
next on our
again.
agenda is the discussion on the
Can't
proposal to hold meeting at a community center.
Before we leave that,
Yes.
so what passed is that
I'm going to ask the city manager to allow representation from the police commission on that.
And that's the only
committee.
request that we made of the city manager, no specificity as to
Two members.
two members, which two or anything like that.
We, I think we probably need to find out whether our motion is entertained before we decide who. I think that's probably premature.
Exactly what I was going to say. Thank you.
Okay.
How quickly is he, I apologize, may
Yeah.
I, how quickly is he going to set up the committee? Because if he does it within the month, we won't have the chance to reconnoiter and make that decision. Do you like that word?
Yes.
That's like a 480 SAT word right
Scares me a
there.
little.
Yeah.
When do you,
I had the same question.
when do you, what's the break for the commission?
Oh, we're meeting the second Thursday of December.
No break. And the council's
Oh, the
break?
council. Oh,
No, that's your,
council.
so your break is.
We don't
after
have
the
one. We don't
third.
have a break.
It's about when the manager's going to put the committee together, though. It really.
I think so. I think it might be in November.
Yeah, so I would suggest you do the following, it's just a suggestion, but you might consider those willing to volunteer at the table, and if there's more than two, then I don't know if we'd take a popularity vote on that, but I'd say that everybody who has an interest in doing so, our recommendation to the manager stands. Everyone in the room who has an interest in doing so could probably ask as well, and then he can choose.
Okay. So can I see a show of hands of the folks that are interested? Bob,
I have a question.
Oh, are you? Don't raise your hand if you do too. Just raise your hand if you're interested in representing the police commission on the committee, if we should have a chair or two at the table of the committee. Juan Carlos and Joe?
I think it's a good choice.
Okay. So there's only two.
I'd do it, but it'd be weird.
Yes, Bob?
I had a suggestion, since our charter says that the chairperson of the committee would be the spokesperson for the committee, the commission rather. I was going to suggest the chair and vice chair be the two people appointed to serve, and there wouldn't be any issue of whether or not they speak for the commission, because that's what the charter says they do, so that's just my suggestion, if someone wants to do that. If not, I just think it's important we have some representation on the issue and a chance to weigh in, that's all.
James?
Yeah, I do agree with you, Bob, but Joe is the chair of the Outreach Resource Committee, so I think that would be, from my perspective, that would be a great person to have there. And of course, Juan Carlos is volunteering to be a part of that. I think it'd be a great combination. That, my opinion.
Jim?
I would, since we don't have a full commission here, and we don't
Right.
have some, including the chair of the commission here, I think that we should at least give the people that are absent the opportunity to put their name in the ring.
Okay. So Caitlin and Linda?
Especially since I think we decided it's a pretty important issue, and I would hate to exclude somebody.
Like I say, anybody can ask to be a part of the thing, just who the manager chooses. Our only recommendation is that you choose two people from here.
Okay, so we have two people we know that are here today that are interested. We have three potentially gone. How, that we will ask their interest in this. If we have more than two, how would this group like to decide who will represent the police commission? James?
I think that if there have two that already step forward, if there are additional, I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be considered as part of it. I think that probably the city manager would welcome more diversity and ideas and creativity and creative thought. than to limit themselves to just a few ideas and stuff. And who knows, it will cover the two that are not here, should they decide that they would like to participate. So,
Well, the motion was to send 2 representatives. So.
yeah, but
Oh, yeah. Mike,
Forgive me, the motion was not to send 2
you
representatives.
asked.
The motion was to ask the manager if he would please populate the committee with people from the commission.
Thank you.
So as many people from the commission as want to volunteer to serve can. It's just that we're asking the manager to please consider that 2 of his appointees come from this commission. And that, my point is, it's not our decision, it's the manager's.
Okay.
And just to address expectations, there are many interested parties who would like to be on this committee, and this is city manager, I'm sure will want to keep it to a number of people who can make good decisions. If groups are too big, it's hard to, come up with good recommendations.
Claire?
I don't know if this is proper process, but, I mean, it could be that the city manager sees our motion and says, well, I'll give you 1. Now we've got 2 volunteers and 3 other people who might. I don't know if it would be proper and appropriate for the chair and vice chair to determine who the representative are. I don't know that it's something we have to vote on. I agree with James that I think Juan Carlos and Joe would be excellent representatives, and I think our other folks as well. So I mean, that's one suggestion of how to deal with the timing issue.
Juan Carlos?
I thought it would be harder to get to the first part, which was the motion, than it is to talk about what we're talking about today. In the end, hopefully, we have chosen a chair of the police commission to represent in this person. If it came down to the point, I'll be okay with sending or having the chair be self-selected as the representative there. But again, I also believe that if you're not here, you're not part of this discussion, it's on the agenda, including the chair. And I'm not saying because I'm volunteering, I'm saying this is part of the discussion. We're talking about this today. I've been absent a couple of times and decisions were made. I'm not going to be asked to reopen the conversation. So again, I'm doing those 2 things because I want to be fair on that.
Thank you. Have Jesse and then James.
Even if the committee gets put together, I can't imagine their first meeting is going to be within a month. So we're going to be meeting again in a month. We could see what happens and then decide who will go to that meeting.
James?
yeah, just kind of going back to some things that I don't think that we've really much talked about, but even when we have commissioners that are ill or not in a particular area and stuff, we've not pushed for phone-in for them to participate. I think that's an opportunity that we need to pursue if they can't be here for whatever reason, to offer that as an option.
Thanks for reminding us about that, James. I have myself next in the queue, and I don't know, I mean, none of us know what the timeline's going to be. I've seen things move extremely slowly with some committees. My recollection on the PAORC was that it moved very quickly. The group was put together and started meeting like right away because they had a very rigorous timeline. So I would hesitate to guess at when the first meeting was going to be and assume that it's going to be after our December Police Commission meeting. I would not make that assumption based on some of the things I've seen happen in the past. If this is an issue and it's got a year until the sunset and there's a group being put together, I don't know that it would wait until after our next commission meeting. So, there's no one else on the queue. So unless there's a motion to decide how to send representatives, we have 2 folks that have volunteered at the table. We've had the suggestion made that the 3 folks that are not here be given the opportunity to also volunteer. Unless there's a motion to the contrary, then we have 2, potentially 5 folks interested in if we get 1 or 2 positions at the table. So does anybody have a suggestion would anybody have a motion about how they would like to see that decision be made if there's more than 2 folks interested or spots available? Hi.
I was trying to say, the manager will decide despite whatever motion we put forward.
Okay.
You mean he'll select it?
The city council empowered the manager to make the decision about who the membership of the committee is. So we could make a recommendation about who we'd like to have him choose, but he will decide who he chooses.
Thanks for running about that. All right.
Can I just ask a quick question? Would it be agreeable if the city manager, if he chooses to add someone from the police commission, contact the chair to learn from the chair who's going to sign? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right, well, if there's no further discussion on this, we'll go ahead and go to our next agenda item, which was proposal to hold a meeting at the community center. Carter, do you need to leave that one or you?
This is an item that was brought up in the retreat, and the memo in the right inside the agenda outlines the existing community centers where meetings could be held, and should the commission wish to have a meeting in a community center, it would be great to have you tell me where and when, and we'll make it happen.
Claire?
Just to clarify, this is a regular commission, police commission meeting.
Jim?
Are all these locations are free, no cost?
Yes. I'm not sure that they're all available on Thursday nights, so I haven't checked them all out to see if they're free, available free, but you tell me where you want to have us meet, and I'll see if it's free.
Juan Carlos?
Yeah, thanks, Carter, for the short and sweet information on this item. This is a recommendation already made at the retreat. We're not trying to decide how we're going to, this is something that the commission wanted to do.
It received one vote, so it was not the only things that got slated for the work plan were the items that got 3 or 2 votes or more, and this did not. So it's being added to the list as something to consider, but it didn't receive as many. There's a lot of things that only got 1 vote that did not make the plan.
I see. So we first, are you saying we have to decide first whether or not to have the meeting at a community center, then choose the location? So then you probably will need a motion to do so. I see.
Jesse, were you in the queue?
I don't know what criteria we should use to choose one or the other. Peterson Barn's over on my side of town. I like that. But I like the idea of traveling around and giving all the neighborhoods an opportunity to not have to go far to meet us.
I have James and then Bob in the queue.
2 things. When it comes back down to being able to phone in, I think that's something that we need to work on with one of those smaller phones or whatever the case may be for conference calls or something that's made available. I think that resource will probably work better here than on a road show. The next thing is that if, for example, the commission decide that they would like to have a host a meeting at one of these other locations and stuff, what would be the gain? I mean, if no one is showing up at the meetings here, what assurance will there be that people will show up there? That's the purpose of the outreach committee. The outreach committee can hold their meetings at these various locations, which they're doing downtown. So I really don't see a benefit for the full commission to go on a road show like that. And one is that we don't have the resources available. For example, the phone, which we need to add on here. And I don't see a big, would it be something that we will look for the neighborhood association or something to say, hey, would you mind holding your meeting here where you can attract people or something like that? So I really don't see a big benefit doing that.
Here I have Bob, myself, and then Joe in the queue. Bob?
I was going in a different direction until I heard James, and then I kind of agreed with what he said. Maybe the outreach and resource committee could get to all of these meetings, all these lake locations in their meetings, and have one each month at a different location and invite people to come and speak about what their concern is about the police commission. And yeah, I think that would be a better way of reaching out to people than just holding a meeting per se.
Okay, I have myself next in the queue. And, we did this once a few years ago, and I think we held it at the Sheldon Community Center. And we didn't have any more public there than came to our regular commission meetings. But I don't think that means that we shouldn't try. I think that having our meeting in another neighborhood or another location affords the opportunity for the public that lives in that neighborhood to come. I would not support rotating our meeting around the community just because it's really hard, and because this item only got one vote in our retreat. And so it's not like it had a resounding support for the idea of rotating around. But I think that making sure that the neighborhood group and the neighborhood where if we do decide to have one, making sure that they know, because they could help us advertise it. I don't know, more of the public, or we would have different public that can, but I think it's worth a shot. Joe, and then Juan Carlos.
I kind of do like the idea of maybe having the outreach committee do this, so we can maybe talk about it at our next meeting. But going on James's thing about the phone, do we have an internet drop in this room?
We have wireless.
You do have wireless. How good is it? Reasonable?
It's a little slow right now.
Hang on, I'll check.
Okay. Because we could have somebody Skype in. I mean, I'd be happy to use the laptop, and they could do video phone and the whole thing if they wanted to for the phone thing. And that would be, if there's a wire drop, that's much more reliable. But we could bring missing people in through that. It works really well, and I've done conference calls using Skype. It works great. Everybody gets to see on the video.
So it shows strong on here.
If they have a camera and everything on their side.
Yeah, assuming that they have
It's good on my phone.
It's doing really well, I was just talking about it.
I think we've got phone conference hardware that would allow us, anywhere that's got a phone line, to connect in, use the city bridge and have a conference call.
Well, I guess the question is, we've sort of got this going in the middle of another discussion, but does the group want to offer that as a service? As part of our...
I have Juan Carlos and then James.
Well, this only got one vote, or just a small interest. I was surprised that was brought in to the agenda, but I'm also pleased because then we get it out of the way. As you know, I've been a proponent and advocate of bringing the commission to folks that otherwise simply are not able to come all the way over here. That's the fact. In fact, one group that I can think of right away is the Whitaker Community Association folks. I know this because they've told me directly. I'm intimidated, I don't want to go all the way downtown when he was there. And the fact is that, yes, I support that the Outreach and Resource Committee does those meetings. In fact, regardless and independently of this, I hope that they will consider doing that anyway. But the fact is the Police Commission, in fact, entertains different types of things in a meeting to take care of many different decisions. And that'll be important for people that don't normally come or interested to see how this body makes decisions. There's already comments that I received personally that the Police Commission needs to be more independent and that we need to show them what we do. That will be one way for us to attain that. Again, if we end up now going that route and having the full Police Commission meeting at Community Center, I hope that the Outreach and Research Committee, in fact, does go out to different communities to do this.
James?
Blank. Pass.
Claire?
So since I wasn't part of the retreat and I don't have all the context for the conversation, I feel a little bit like I don't have great ideas to offer, but I mean, I don't think it needs to be one or the other. I think the outreach committee could still look at doing meetings out in the community or using the neighborhood group meetings as a way to connect by attending their meetings, asking to be put on their agendas. One idea in terms of figuring out if we want to do this and if it would give us any bang for our buck is if we're able to scan ahead to see what might be on our agenda for future meetings and try to hold that meeting in a part of town that might be particularly affected by the discussion. That might be too much to ask in terms of knowing what's coming up on our agenda. going forward. But, if we were doing some work that was going to affect the West University in terms of, the social host ordinance, for example, then it might get us some more community eyes if we're in that part of town for the commission meeting.
I have myself and then Mike and you. So I think that, and I appreciate the discussion around the table, but instead of this body deciding what the public outreach committee might do, I think the question is, do we want to have our full commission meeting, at least one in a neighborhood, which was really the suggestion, was to have one full police commission meeting in a neighborhood. So I didn't hear that question sort of being answered around the table, so I've got Mike in the queue, and then I'm going to do a round robin, and I'd like to hear a yes or no from everyone, because I'm not clear on what the consensus is.
If I can just clarify, I was talking about the full police commission, not the average commission.
No, I know you were, but there's been other discussion around the table.
I think it should be either A, we hold it in the same place all the time so it's reliably in a place where people know where it is if they want to come and participate and have, because the point of which is to increase public participation. So it's either in the same place where everybody's certain where it is, or it's on a deliberately rotating basis where we get everywhere, so that we don't end up in one particular part of town more often than in another.
I'd like to hear everybody a yes or no, whether they want to have meetings out in at least one community.
No.
Joe?
No, I think another alternative is probably better, but no on rotating.
Juan Carlos?
Yes.
Bob?
I'm okay with the way James suggested, just the outreach committee meeting.
Jim? James?
No.
Mike?
No.
Claire? And I'm no. So the consensus I hear that around the table is no. So, no, wasn't I'm not going to take a formal vote because there's not a motion on the table. So thank you for your discussion and input on that. That brings us to our last agenda item, which is closing comment. I'll go ahead and start with Jim and proceed in a counterclockwise direction.
Pretty lively discussion tonight on looks like we're only a few topics, but it sure got interesting and lively tonight. So I'll keep my comments short and we'll leave it at that. Oh, wait, I can't. Sorry. Welcome, Claire.
Oh, thank you.
And welcome, Mike. Haven't seen you for a while.
Thank you.
Good to see you back here. And, Chief, welcome back again. Missed you last time also. And I'll leave it at that.
Bob?
Thanks, Al. Thank you.
Juan Carlos?
Thank you. Pat?
I just wonder if there's a way to get a discussion going on for example, some of the articles that the chief has been putting, that Carter's been adding to our packets, to look at some of these different ideas and sort of bring that kind of stuff up. I mean, how do we do that?
Well, we have a work plan that the group decided on when we had our retreat last year, and then that's what we put in front of the city council, what's approved by the city council for us to work on. So not that you can't request, remember last time Caitlin said she would like to hear if people would like to put things on the agenda, but the priority is the work plan that is voted for. If you would like to ask to have something specific put on the agenda, I'm going to suggest that you let Caitlin know if you have suggestions. Yeah.
Chief, thank you for bringing up again your concerns, comments about policies, questions about what we put forth. It sparked a great discussion. I really enjoyed it. I think it worked out well.
I would like to welcome Claire to the committee for the long or short time that we have her. And I'm sad for Juan Carlos that he won't win his city council bid, but I'm thrilled that we still have him on the submission. And we would have lost him if he, probably more likely than not. Claire?
Yes, well, it's nice to be here. I'm sitting at the table with you all. Some of you may remember that I often came to public comment in my role with the ACLU of Oregon, and the chief and I certainly worked together quite a lot. And I apologize for being late. I was at work. My board of directors met from 4 to 6, so it was not a meeting I could skip out on because they're my bosses. And I don't think that'll be a conflict next month. And it will be up to the mayor as to whether or not I continue, or if Councilor Clark and I continue on starting in January. So I'm here for this month and next month, and I will endeavor to participate and contribute as much as I can. And if I stay on beyond that, I look forward to that too.
Two things. One, welcome to my friend Claire here, who is also, I get to work with at the other table as well, so that's cool. Number two, sorry, I was late. I had a meeting on the next location of the City Hall, and I'm looking forward to our coffee soon. Then I wanted to say on a more personal note a couple of things. One, many of you probably already know this, and I don't share it as a big deal, but I went through a divorce a couple months ago, and so that's kind of kept me in my process of getting my world reordered, and I haven't participated in the last few months as much as I would have liked to, but I'm reasonably squared away now, so I'm sure you'll see me back at it more frequently.
We missed you at the Budget Committee.
Yes, it was regrettable that I dropped a few balls along the way there, but it was one of those life circumstances that I think you just got to take care of. So now that's behind me. I'd like to say a very personal thank you to the police department, and again, this is a very personal thing, but my son's bike was stolen from in front of his school on Monday, and you're all well aware of the nature of the situation in our county and in our city, and bikes get stolen frequently, and that's usually the end of that. Well, he got it back yesterday. Lieutenant Mozan took a call, having seen it on Craigslist, and he put a couple of detectives on it, and they did a sting, as you will, out there in Vaughn Park, and my son got his bike back. And I'm really, really personally appreciative of the officers who did that work. And I put it on Facebook saying, yay for our police officers, and all kind of, I think I got like 60 people all chiming in going, yay for our police officers. So, good job.
James, you're the last one.
Okay, well, a couple of things. As you are aware or may not be aware of, I'm a member of the Oregon Commission on Black Affairs. And as mentioned, Senate Bill 44, which is hate crimes legislation, we're in contact with the State's Attorney General, sit down with her and talk about the language and stuff. The current law is intimidation in order to provide the appropriate language that will be more specific, focused, and clear on exactly what hate crime is and how it's applicable throughout the state of Oregon. So we're still moving on that. It was dead at the founded at the Senate floor the first time, but it's being revised and stuff, and we got a lot of conversation. EPD and crime prevention, they have an excellent program that's going on. Chief mentioned it in his presentation. I call it Crime Prevention Community Roadshow, where they're going out to various neighborhoods and they're showing crime prevention and doing the whole spiel. I would encourage all of the commissioners, when it comes to your area and stuff, if you would kind of go out there and support. If you haven't, it's a great opportunity to go out there, and folks can see that the actual police commission expands the outreach, and it shows that we are really involved with this, because this is a great thing that's going on in view of all the crime and stuff. Get Mike's son's bike back and quite a few other things. So that's all I have.
Chief, closing comment?
Well, yeah, I'd like to thank everybody for your work on the commission. I know you're not paid well to be here, but you always show up and give so much, take all the issues seriously, and your work helps us quite a bit. I forgot to mention that I've been appointed to the Governor's Commission on Community Contacts, which is essentially the racial profiling prevention type of commission that the governor has had for many years. And I'm representing the Oregon Police Chiefs Association there. So it's a good thing for the police department, because we will have a module with our new records management system that will track demographics with the contacts that we make. And I don't know everything that'll be included, all the contacts that will be included, but it'll be a good thing for us. And then I listened carefully to your discussion about appointment to the city manager's committee, and I'm working with the city manager on that, so I'll let him know what was said here. And then I Always appreciate hearing what you'd like to see in the monthly report, so thanks for reminding me, Juan Carlos, about the contacts that I have in the community, the appearances that I make in the community. And then I also heard the discussion on excited delirium, so Nate will help me go through the police operations manual to see how we've used that term before. And I know there is some debate in the medical community about the use of that term, so we'll take another look at that.
Carter, do you have closing comments? Okay, that concludes our meeting. Please pass the meeting forward.
Commission that you talk about, I might see you on that.